Hello and welcome to Who Wore It Better, where I review Raw and Smackdown back to back and try and figure out which show won for the week. Lots of crazy stuff happening across both shows this week, so let's dive right in. Raw opens up with Mr. McMahon arriving in his limo, and then Braun Strowman shows up in the ring for some promo time. He cuts a far better promo than whatever garbage he spewed out last week during the face-to-face. The only thing he flubbed on that I could tell was he referred to Crown Jewel as the World Cup. Maybe that's intentional, maybe they're kind of subtly rebranding that show. Anyway, Baron Corbin comes out, interrupts him. He says that Braun keeps letting his fans down, and well, he's not wrong. Braun chases Baron to the back and through the arena and stuff, and then Elias just shows up out of nowhere and serenades Baron's location to Braun. Really cool way to use Elias in that scene there. Braun finds the limo Baron's hiding in, and he starts trashing the limo. Baron runs off, and then Vince McMahon shows up and is super pissed because that's his limo after all. There's a really funny moment where Braun tries to put the door back on its hinges, and it just falls down. So Vince is pissed about this. He fines Braun 100,000 smackers, and then he takes away his Universal Championship match against Lesnar at the Royal Rumble. And so Braun flips the limo in anger, and that was it. And then he a couple segments later, you see him leaving the arena. So what the hell happened? Is Braun still hurt? Is he not healing as fast as they expected? Was him shitting the bed in the face-to-face last week really that bad? Yes, it was. The scuttlebutt also says that Vince doesn't want Braun to lose to Brock again, which, yeah, no kidding, because after you have him lose enough times, people are going to stop caring about him. It's sad that how they keep dicking around with Braun in the main event championship picture, and I've slowly come to the realization that Braun is just going to probably just be like this generation's Big Show or Kane, just a big, strong dude who they can plop into main event storylines if they have to. In case of emergency, get Braun out there, turn him heel, and have him, be the next, a heel challenger and stuff. And ultimately, if he ever does win a championship, it's going to be, done to put somebody else over in the long run. They're never going to make him like the top star like I think a lot of people last year were kind of hoping and praying would eventually happen. But such is life. But now there is going to be a replacement for who's going to face Lesnar for the championship, and that's going to be the overarching story for the rest of the night. Our first official match is Ronda Rousey and Sasha Banks going against Nia Jax and Tamina in a tag team match. A lot of stop and go action here. Tamina taps out to the Banks statement in the end. I actually forgot what Ronda Rousey did in this matchup. She was kind of a blink and you miss it kind of thing. After the match, they are doing kind of a powwow in the ring, kind of cutting a little promo, and Ronda disrespects Sasha in the ring. She says she wants to show Sasha how much she respects Sasha by making her tap out at the Rumble, and she then eventually calls her the world's classiest loser, and that causes Sasha to go off on her. Then Sasha, just brings the heat on Ronda in this segment, and really it's the most fire I've seen from Sasha in months, like not since the whole teased breakup with her and Bayley before that whole angle went downhill. So after that, backstage, Bayley and Natalya try and play peacekeeper between Sasha and Ronda. While the Riot Squad shows up, they challenge Bayley and Natalya to a 6-woman tag team match if they can find a third partner. So who will it be? Whom? Up next, the Lucha House Party takes on the Revival. Say no, not this match again, but at least that god-awful Lucha House Rules thing is dead and buried for now. The Revival want revenge since the Lucha House Party were negligent in their lumberjacking duties during last week's Raw Tag title match against Ruble. During the match, we actually get kind of a picture-in-picture, a backstage report on all these different wrestlers who are lining up to talk to Mr. McMahon about, getting that replacement spot against Brock Lesnar at the Royal Rumble. We see EC3. He's one of the first of the many call-ups we'll be seeing tonight. He just stands there and silently stands there and just walks off, which is kind of a waste for him. But yes, then in the match itself, the Revival finally get their win back against the Lucha House Party by taking Grand Metalik's foot off the ropes in the pinfall. So, say yeah! Mr. McMahon makes his way to the ring to announce who's going to be facing Brock Lesnar at the Royal Rumble. Before he can say a word, though, John Cena comes out. He talks a good game and makes a strong case for why he should be Braun Strowman's replacement in that title match. Then out comes Drew McIntyre, who says it's actually his time that's now. And then Baron Corbin shows up again. Out comes Finn Balor. So they all make their case to Vince, and Vince tells Finn that he lacks the beef to challenge Brock Lesnar at the Rumble. If a scuffle breaks out, Drew McIntyre stands tall at the end. Vince makes a fatal 4-way match in the main event to determine who will actually face Brock at the Rumble. It's a pretty good segment. Then right after that, backstage, Jinder Mahal Mahal approaches Mr. McMahon and makes his case for why he should be in that match. And so Vince says you can pick one of the 4 guys in that match, and if you beat that guy, you'll be put in the Fatal 4-Way. So Jinder chooses Finn Balor, and so they'll be wrestling later on. 6-woman tag team match as the Riot Squad take on Bayley, Natalya, and Nikki Cross, officially making her in-ring Raw debut. She is the only call-up who actually gets a match on Raw, so good for her. They announced that all these new call-ups that we're going to be seeing tonight, they're going to be bopping around between Raw and SmackDown, so the fans can get to know them a little bit better before they settle into where they eventually end up going. Because I guess 3 weeks of the exact same vignettes was not enough. It's a fun match. Bayley wins for her team after hitting the elbow drop on Liv Morgan after the assist by Nikki Cross. If Nikki didn't lose a random match on SmackDown a couple of months ago when they were overseas, I feel this debut would have been a lot more impactful. We get a Lacey Evans sighting backstage, followed by an entertaining Dean Ambrose promo. Then we get Jinder Mahal versus Finn Balor, where the winner will go on to that Fatal 4-Way in the main event. Jinder gets the jump on Finn early on after a Samir Singh distraction. I expected this match to be a lot shorter than it actually was, but this is like a full-length standard TV match here, where Finn goes over with a coup de grace. So that it really just helps build the odds for him. He wrestles this big, long, tough match, and now he's got to fight 3 other guys in a Fatal 4-Way at the end of the night. So who knows what's going to happen. A triple threat match for the IC title as Dean Ambrose defends against Seth Rollins and Bobby Lashley, who's been all up in Seth's business the last couple of weeks. Seth takes some huge bumps in this matchup, in particular a couple of spine busters, one in the ring, from Lashley I should say. He takes the first spine buster in the ring, and the face he makes when he sells is tremendous. We actually get some brief collusion between Seth and Dean as the match goes on. Lio Rush gets involved a lot, and ultimately Lashley wins the championship after spearing Dean Ambrose. So Lashley's IC champion for the first time in his career. It's a great match. I never saw the finish coming. I don't really mind Dean losing the belt this way because the feud with him and Seth, it doesn't really need the championship for it to work and for it to be a good feud. The belt was a nice little bit of window dressing. Ultimately, Dean's reign with the championship is kind of like meh, because what do you do with it? But giving Lashley the belt, I think, is a good shot in the arm for him. That combined with, adding Lio Rush and the heel turn from a month or 2 ago, I think the pieces are in place for what could be a good Lashley run, but we'll see. But then we get what is easily the most talked about and controversial segment in the entire week of shows. You've got this, a runner, a gopher for WWE, going to Alexa Bliss's dressing room to give her her coffee. He knocks on the door repeatedly, makes his presence known, but he walks in there and Alexa Bliss is changing. Oh, how shocked, how dare you do that? And so then he runs off. And that was pretty much it. It wasn't played for laughs that I could tell. There was no comedic aspect to it at all. It just happened, and they didn't follow up on it at all in the aftermath. But I have so many questions about this. I'm not even going to get into the whole aspect of whether or not a scene like that is even necessary in today's programming, but I have some issues and some questions with what happened there. Because first of all, Alexa has to be deaf because, like I said, the gopher made his presence known repeatedly. He knocked, he said he was coming in, and she's still like, oh, she's 2 feet from the door. How is she not going to notice that's happening? Or yell out, I'm busy, don't come in yet, something like that. Also, why is she still getting dressed for this segment that is minutes away? Does she not get a run sheet? Does she not get any kind of programming about when her segment's going to run, and she's just still getting dressed for it? It doesn't make her look very smart, which is not the first time I've said that about her character. The most important thing was, what was the point of that? What was the point of any of what we saw? Because is the gopher getting a push? Is he going to be put into angles from here on out? Is this going to help build Alexa's character? I don't think it's going to do that. It's what can they do to build off that? It wasn't titillating, because Lord knows we've seen Alexa show more skin in her ring attire. It wasn't edgy. It was just shock for the sake of shock, but it wasn't shocking so much as it was dumb. And then the cherry on top of this whole thing was, whose bright idea was it to cut back to the announce team? You see Corey Graves hiding his boner, and then Michael Cole's befuddled, and then you've got Renee Young with a straight face just plugging the Glass movie that they've been doing all night up to this point, and they fade to black for commercial. What the fuck? So we get the Moment of Bliss talk show segment. Alexa shows up fully dressed, not even holding the cup of coffee that the runner took the trouble to bring to her in the first place in the previous segment, and she reveals the new Women's Tag Team Championships, and those are some damn good looking belts. Probably the nicest belts on the main roster right now. It looks great, and I love the colors. They pop. It's a very bright pair of belts. And so she announces that it's going to be 3 teams from Raw and 3 from SmackDown. They'll be fighting in the Chamber at the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view in February to determine the first women's tag champions, which I think is great. I think it's a very exciting concept, and the fact that it's going to be competed for by both shows makes me maybe hopeful that it's going to be a floating championship going back and forth between both brands, because Lord knows there aren't enough tag teams on either show by themselves to sustain a women's tag team championship. So I think having that be a floating title, it can only be a good thing, but it might be wishful thinking. When I saw this, I couldn't help but think about this segment juxtaposed with the previous one with Alexa Bliss in the dressing room, and all I could think of was was Vince McMahon or whatever writer was behind this kind of saying, making some play for, okay, let's just do one more, somewhat sexy thing with the ladies before we just take them seriously now. We just get one more out of our system and then we're done with all that stuff. So after all that, Paul Heyman's introduced as the guest on the segment, and he talks about all the competitors in the Fatal 4-Way match coming up. He puts over Drew McIntyre tremendously while he's talking, but then as he's talking, Otis Dozovich from Heavy Machinery shows up. He starts shaking and just babbling nonsense, going, pretty lady, Tucky, pretty lady. And then Tucker Knight shows up and ushers him off and everything. And in that moment, it dawned on me, oh my God, Heavy Machinery is going to be the new Jesse and Festus. Both teams even have food mentioned in their catchphrases. How did I not see this coming? I knew going into this, when I saw that they were going to be called up, that they were going to be kind of a comedy team, especially because of Otis's antics. But even this was overblown. This is serious, taking the most exaggerated part of Otis's shtick and turning it into One Dimension City, because that's what I felt that was, because that's not an accurate representation of what Otis Dozovich is like as a character. It's the extreme. And so not the best introduction for Otis Dozovich, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, they're going to be strictly a comedy team from here on out. So as Heavy Machinery do their thing and they walk to the back, Heyman and Alexa just stand there looking completely confused, not knowing what's going on. All of a sudden you hear the bell ring and the ring announcer introduce the next match, the Fatal 4-Way, and then Heyman and Alexa just put their mics down, walk away, and that was it. What kind of crazy shit is happening here with how they're transitioning these segments? I want to know who's right in this third hour, because this shit is banana. So yeah, Heavy Machinery were the last NXT call-ups you saw on Monday night. You'd see all of them again in some capacity on SmackDown as well. The one person who didn't show up, very conspicuous in his absence, was Lars Sullivan. He's only the guy they've been hyping up more than anyone else of the 6 NXT call-ups. He wasn't there on either show, Monday or Tuesday. And there's a lot of stories as to why he wasn't there. The one that has the most traction right now is that allegedly Sullivan suffered an anxiety attack of some kind before Raw, and he just didn't work. He was supposed to work dark matches both nights. He didn't do them, and he left or something, and there's heat on him. Again, not confirmed. This is not verified, but that's the story that seems to have the most traction right now. So I certainly hope he's okay. I certainly hope that it's a very interesting story, but I hope he's okay if it is true. Anxiety and panic attacks are those kind of things that, can come from nowhere, often for no reason. It's not something to be taken lightly. Hopefully he's okay, and hopefully he can come to television and do the thing they wanted him to do when he shows up. Main event time as Finn Balor, Baron Corbin, John Cena, and Drew McIntyre take part in a Fatal 4-Way to see who will face Brock Lesnar at the Royal Rumble. This is a great match, a really entertaining main event. I love the story throughout between Cena and Finn specifically, working together, fighting each other, on and off sort of thing. The match ends when Finn hits the coup de grace on Cena to win the match. Not only does he win the match, he wins over Cena, and then after that, Cena gets on the microphone and just totally puts him over tremendously. I don't think he gave this treatment to Roman Reigns when Reigns beat him at No Mercy a couple years ago. This was something else. It was a huge seal of approval. Not everyone goes over on John Cena, and usually when they do, that's indicative of something bigger ahead. Off the top of my head, Daniel Bryan beating him, AJ Styles beating him. Those were all big things. Roman Reigns beating him as well. And so this was quite a big deal. And, you couldn't ask for a bigger seal of approval because, Finn is now like all the momentum's on his side because the whole shtick was, or the night was, him saying that Vince never believed in Finn. The people always did. And then Cena says, well, I'm a believer now. And so, boom, instant credibility lent to Finn. Now he's on this almost kind of out of nowhere ascent to the main event because he's been kind of dawdling in the mid card for so long. It does feel kind of out of nowhere, very reminiscent of his first night on Raw when the brand split first began a couple of years ago when he won 2 matches in one night, and one of which was over Roman Reigns to qualify for the Universal Championship match at SummerSlam, which he would eventually win. And then, of course, he gave up the next night due to injury. But the parallels are there. I'm not thinking that Finn's going to win this one unless if they really want to, knock the world on his ear. I think they could do that at the Rumble, but I have reservations about it. I think everyone's going to speculate for the next couple weeks if Demon Man will be showing up against Brock at the Royal Rumble. I am very hyped for that match though, Finn and Brock, because we've seen what Lesnar's done over the last couple of years with like AJ Styles and Daniel Bryan at Survivor Series. So when he wants to, he can have a really exciting match with a smaller guy. I feel he has better matches with the smaller guys than he does with the bigger guys like Braun and Samoa Joe as of late. So then again, it could go the other way. It could end up being a squash match that we all kind of fear will happen, and Finn will just be the sacrificial lamb. But there's a lot of speculation about that. But nevertheless, I'm very excited for this match. SmackDown begins with Becky Lynch rolling into the arena in a rental car, getting out, tossing the keys to the interview lady, and then she walks by the New Day and Heavy Machinery, who for some reason are making smoothies in the middle of the parking lot garage. She takes a sip of Otis's gross-looking shake. She walks on into the ring, cuts a promo on Asuka. Asuka interrupts, and then she says that, at the Rumble, Becky's going to be in her shadow instead of Charlotte's. The Iconics interrupt and talk some trash. I totally forgot about these ladies. Last week when I was like, gosh, what female heels are there besides Sonya Deville and Mandy Rose? Everyone corrected me and said the Iconics were there. Well, could have fooled me because I haven't seen them on TV in a while. So anyway, they talk some trash, and then Becky wants to challenge either of them to a fight. So we've got Becky Lynch versus Peyton Royce coming out of the break. We see Lacey Evans watching things sideways at the monitor, holding a fancy drink. So it was a decent enough match. Becky wins to disarm her. Asuka gets into the ring, screams at her in Japanese, and the body language says she wants the other Iconic. So it's going to be Asuka versus Billie Kay. Asuka makes short work of her with the Asuka lock, and then so we get the stare down between Asuka and Becky. AJ Styles shows up, and then he breaks the tension between the two ladies, and he just walks through the crowd. We go to break, and we see AJ in the concession stand, and he's trying to do kind of like the counter to what Daniel Bryan did last week from his concession stand promo. I honestly have no idea half of what AJ's saying here because it's just being drowned out by all the crowd noise around him. Daniel Bryan shows up from the crowd and picks a fight, and so they're brawling in the concession stand. AJ puts Daniel through the table, mustard's flying everywhere, and that's pretty much it. It was a neat little segment, kind of a nice little counter to what Daniel did last week, but I don't think it was that strong. I keep bringing this up, but the fact that this is for the WWE Championship, the main title on SmackDown, and it felt just kind of an underwhelming segment, in the grand scheme of things. It was kind of lost in the shuffle among everything else that happened on the show. Backstage, the Usos are taking some promo pictures when someone delivers a gift to Jimmy, and it turns out it is a note from Mandy Rose, complete with a rose and a key to her hotel room, and so, intrigue. We see Samoa Joe walking by EC3, who's posing for himself in front of the mirror, which I think is a better shake than what he got on Monday. And so we get Samoa Joe versus Mustafa Ali on paper until Joe beats up Ali before the bell rings and just lays him out after repeated beatings. So Joe looking strong and vicious as he often does, which is nice until he ends up putting somebody over in the end. Backstage, Mandy Rose is talking to Sonya Deville and reveals her plan to her that she wants to make Naomi's life as miserable as possible by breaking up their marriage with Naomi and Jimmy Uso, which even Sonya Deville objects to. We then see Rey Mysterio walking past Nikki Cross backstage, and we go to Mysterio versus Andrade. Not Andrade Cien Almas, just Andrade. He's just a singular name now. He's carrying on the rich tradition of guys like Carlito, Cesaro, Big E, Elias, and so forth. It's always dumb when they shorten wrestlers' names because it's kind of for no reason. Like, why are you doing it? And you've got kind of a rhythm in your head when you think of somebody. Big E Langston, Antonio Cesaro, Elias Sampson, Andrade Cien Almas, and now there's one name. It is dumb, but I feel over time we all kind of get over it, and it just kind of becomes like, oh, it's accepted now. And so we'll see how long it takes for us to get used to just Andrade. Anyway, really good stuff between these two yet again. For the second week in a row, Rey hits the Canadian Destroyer onto Andrade, which makes me wonder if anyone in the back even is aware of what that move actually is. In the end, Zelina Vega with the distraction causes Andrade to capitalize, hits a hammerlock DDT off, I think, the second turnbuckle for him to win over Rey yet again. So 2 big wins in a row for Andrade. Awesome TV match. So Jimmy Uso goes to Mandy Rose's hotel room, and she's looking all sexy for him and everything. And as they're talking, a photographer jumps out of the bathroom, takes some pictures, and runs off. And so Mandy commits that classic supervillain mistake where she reveals to Jimmy her entire plan. It's like, oh, I hate Naomi so much. I'm so much hotter than she is, and I'm going to ruin her life by showing her these pictures. And so Jimmy just goes, well, he walks away, basically shrugs it off. Naomi shows up, and so she and Mandy have a brawl in the hotel room, and Mandy runs away. She manages to escape, but Naomi comes out looking pretty strong in here. This angle's a lot more interesting than I thought it was going to be, because we are seeing the married couple, stay strong in all this, and even find a way to turn the tables on Mandy. And so, props for that. In our final portion of the show, The Miz hosts a bestie birthday bash for his new tag team partner, Shane McMahon, who turned 49 on Tuesday. Miz gives him gifts. He shows like a highlight package of all the crazy stuff Shane's done over the years. They share some nice words with each other when the bar interrupt. Shane puts The Miz against Sheamus in an impromptu match right then and there. Miz is still wrestling in his suit, but thank God he's wearing his wrestling boots underneath. Thank God he had those on at the time, because who knows how bad things could have gotten. Lots of spots early on where they tease like, oh, I'm going to fall into the cake at this table at ringside, but they don't do it. It's a pretty, it's an okay match, but Shane eventually throws Cesaro into the other cake table on the other side of the ring. Miz rolls up Sheamus to win the match, and then afterwards, Shane hits the coast to cake onto Sheamus to end the night. Fade to black, and that was pretty much it. It was good for the build of these two as a team. We're seeing them gel more and become more of a cohesive unit and being friendly with each other and everything. My one thing was, I don't think this was a main event segment. I think this could have been put somewhere in the middle. I think that if you want to have a show ending strong, just put Andrade and Rey, and that would have been a fine main event, and I think that would have ended a lot stronger than this one was, but that's just my opinion. Time now for me to decide which show won for the week, Raw or SmackDown. And this one's going to break some precedent, I feel, because for the first time, what feels like forever, I'm giving Raw the undisputed green check mark this week. No ties, none of that. Raw is the sole winner. I think that what made Raw so good for me this week was there was just so much stuff going on the entire show. And yeah, there were some dumb and questionable things that happened, but the sum of its parts I thought were very interesting. We saw, a title change. We saw new championships revealed. We saw a wild audible made to the Universal Championship match, which ended on a promising note when Finn Balor won not one but 2 matches on the night, one of which clean over John Cena, which is it's not a common feat these days. And of course, for Cena to put the stamp of approval on him was just incredible as well. Really built him up as this kind of underdog hero. What I enjoyed most of all about the show was just the feeling of a bustling, vibrant locker room. Every backstage segment you had all these different kind of interactions between wrestlers. One of the things I always gripe about the main product these days is how everything feels isolated. Every segment you see with wrestlers is on an island on its own from everything else, and there's no connection to any of it. No blending, no cross-pollination. But this one you had wrestlers talking to each other in the hallway outside of Vince's office. You saw them talking in catering. You saw, the ladies talking to Lacey Evans backstage as wrestlers walked by for their match. All these different things that made the locker room feel like this living, breathing organism that we just have not seen in quite some time. Except for Heavy Machinery and EC3, I think the other call-ups they showed on Raw were very unique and very well done. I think, again, the IC title match was a lot of fun. The Fatal 4-Way was great, and the reveal of the Women's Tag Team Championships were also a positive as well. The only things I didn't like about Raw were the women's tag match with Rousey and Banks versus Nia and Tamina. The post-match stuff was a little more interesting. But then, of course, and then there's the dumb Alexa Bliss segment. With SmackDown, I feel that their strongest point was Rey versus Andrade. And then a distant second of the best thing about that show to me was just the opening segment with Becky Lynch driving up. Kind of a whole one-take deal where Becky drives up, tosses the keys, drinks the shake, goes out to the ring. That was really well done. What I didn't like, again, like I mentioned before, just kind of like where they placed the AJ Styles, Daniel Bryan confrontation on the show. Just kind of got buried with everything else going on the show. But yeah, I just loved Raw this week because for the first time in a long time, it felt like everything had like a purpose, everything had a sense of urgency to it, and everything was just, felt like part of one collective organism, not just a series of disjointed segments kind of in a row. Let me know what you thought about Raw and SmackDown this week in the comment section below, and be sure to vote which show you thought was better in the gimmick in the upper right hand corner of your screen. Be sure to thumbs up this video if you like it, subscribe to Wrestling with Regret, buy the t-shirts at prowrestlingtees.com, and check out patreon.com/wrestlingwithregret for exclusive perks and bonus content. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.